Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
From the dawn of time we came, moving silently down the centuries, living many secret lives, struggling to reach the time of the gathering, when the few who remain will battle to the last. No one has ever known we were among you, until now. On the Nerd Party, here at Filibuster, I'm Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. No wait, I'm Dallas King of the Clan King. And in today's episode, I'm speaking to author Jonathan Melville, author of A Kind of Magic, the making of the original Highlander book, and also, in part, his other book, Seeking Perfection, the Unofficial Guide to Tremors. He joins me to discuss all things Highlander related over the next hour, so we hope you enjoy that interview. And in terms of other interviews, there won't be any, because as they say, there can be only one. Enjoy. Where did the idea for the book first come to you?
Well, I've been a fan of Highlander for many years. I first saw the film back in about 1994, I think it was, at the Cameo in Edinburgh, and it's kind of stuck with me ever since, really. And when it came time, so I did my previous book on the Tremors films, as you know. And that was published in 2015. And when that was finished, I was sort of thinking, okay, that's me done with writing. It's quite tiring doing this for a few years. I'll just take a break. And then I got a bit restless quite quickly. I was thinking, okay, what if I was to do a book? So I thought Highlander was a film that I wanted to know more about. At that point, there weren't really any books about it. And I just sort of started sending off some emails to Christopher Lambert and Clancy Brown and Sean Connery, and I just thought, okay, we'll see what the response is like, and if people come back to me, maybe there's something in this. Nobody came back to me, and then not long after, maybe a few weeks later, actually in 2016, after sending emails out, I got an email from the Edinburgh International Film Festival to say that Clancy was coming to Edinburgh as part of the festival for the 30th anniversary of Highlander. And so it all sort of started to fall into place then. So it was a funny one. So it was kind of just me looking around for ideas at first, and then Clancy turning up along the road from me sort of cemented the fact that I should try and do this.
I remember that screening. I was there, and I think I saw you like outside on the red carpet interviewing Clancy, and I was just wondering if that was maybe when the idea came to you. But you kind of had the idea that you wanted to do the book, but it just him coming over and getting the chance to have an interview with him, that sort of kind of that meant to you that it was like, okay, yes, I can do this now, I think.
Yeah, well, Clancy is, I don't know how well you know the sort of world of Highlander or just Clancy Brown, but he basically kind of stepped back a lot from the world of Highlander for many years. And so really he should have been the hardest person to get for the book, if not impossible. So yeah, the fact that I managed to get him really easily first person, it was like an omen, really. So yes, I had my questions. I was thinking at that point, I need to try and get 20 minutes. I need to get 5 key questions I can ask him in those 20 minutes, in case that's the only time I ever get with him, which it kind of was. So
I was surprised actually reading the book that he was so sort of anti-Highlander for such a long time, because at that screening he was really sort of engaged and sort of enjoyed the fact that he'd been brought over, got sort of kilted up, the whole outfit. And, his Q&A, I remember asking him a question, but I think it was about I ended up blanking on a question because basically everyone else had already asked about sort of like Bob Anderson and all this sort of stuff. And then it's like they were waiting on a mic, and then he came over to me and handed me his mic, and I just had this vision of like him in Shawshank, when he sort of taps on the glass when Andy Dufresne's like playing the record player, and I was just so intimidated. I can't even really remember what I asked him then. It was just like an incredible moment. But yeah, no, he was fantastic, and because he was like, at that point it was like the 30th anniversary mean? What do you think it is about Highlander in particular that's, I'm not, I guess, endured so well, because it's really sort of grown in sort of stature over the 30 years, hasn't it? Because certainly reading the book, the making of it was at times a bit of a struggle, and then certainly once it was made, the marketing and promotion of it was probably not what they had wanted. And then, but why do you think it sort of captured imaginations after sort of all this time?
Well, I mean, I think as you sort of say, the release wasn't really a huge success, and like the Tremors or the first Tremors film, it was video VHS that really made the film. Made the film in a way. It found the audience through people hiring it and buying it on videotape. So I think at that point, that's really when the fandom, I guess, started properly, because people started seeing it more. But I think as well in the last maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 or maybe 10 years, just social media really coming along, Facebook and people being able to connect more. I mean, on Twitter, whenever I tweet about Highlander, or certainly when I started talking about the book, people just got very excited, and so many people came out of the woodwork and said it was their favourite film, or one of their favourite films. And of course, before this and without Twitter, how would you get that? You would have your friends you could speak to in the pub when we could go to pubs in the olden days. But other than that, it was all a bit, you didn't know who was a fan of.
Yeah, it probably would have been some sort of.
I definitely think social media and people writing about it on blogs and podcasting. There's at least 2 podcasts just now about Highlander, one about the series and one about everything. So yeah, fandom has sort of grown with social media and the internet. Why it's popular? Well, I mean, that's hard to say. It's very hard to pin that one down. Personally, I think it's something to do with the fact that although it is this, it is an action film in a way. It's a fantasy action sword and update of sort of sword and sandal film from the olden days. But personally, I think it's something to do with that relationship between Connor and Heather. And I think that love story running through the sort of centre of it is probably what grounds it. I keep using that term when I talk about it, but it sort of grounds it in reality. And we can all kind of look at that and say, okay, we can, see someone who's been in love or still in love, and he's lost the person he loves, and we've probably all had that in some way. Hopefully, not as dramatic as Connor and Heather, but it's really just it's really quite a simple thing. I think just that love story that most people can relate to, and then all the madness around it, like Immortals and.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, in some ways, sort of think about it, it is almost that key storyline is almost very similar to actually sort of Dracula in many respects, with Dracula losing his love and then thinking he's found her again, and Mina Harker, and you've lost that person, but you're doomed to live forever and stuff like that. So I guess it's a sort of classic literature trope, and the
doomed love.
Yeah, in terms of like fandom, I guess like before social media, it would have been like these, fan groups that were in the back of a magazine or something. You'd have to send off and join and stuff like that, and be able to converse with them, I guess. In terms of like fandom and the reception of it as well, I'm keen to know, your thoughts on the whole sort of Scottish connection, because for many years it seemed like it wasn't as celebrated as it should be in Scotland. It was almost like they maybe sort of saw it as a slight bit of a joke, I guess, with the fact that you had, the lead Scot played by a Frenchman, and then the most famous Scotsman in the world playing was it Spanish Egyptian? So, what do you think it is about? I always sort of, up until like the 30th anniversary when it was given this big sort of push, it always seemed like it was almost sort of slightly frowned upon or sneered at compared to other sort of Scottish classics. Is it the fact that it was maybe because it's, not entirely set in Scotland, it's like London, New York and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easy. It's a film that was made to be watched at, on a Friday night with popcorn at the cinema. It was meant to be entertaining. And I think, of course, if you are analysing a film in the context of Scottish cinema, and maybe you are thinking more along the sort of traditional, let's say, films. I mean, I suppose you could say Bill Forsyth, though in many ways he's not traditional because he mixed things up a bit and added a lot of humour and did shake things up a little bit. But that kind of more everyday then sort of real life, so to speak, stories, you bring into it this sort of crazy immortal stuff and MTV director directing special effects and things. So I think that side of it, probably people did sort of sneer a little bit at it or look down and say, okay, this is just a popcorn film, we can't take this very seriously. And admittedly, I didn't really go into great detail in the book analysing the sort of the psychology of the Scottish psyche and how it ties into the film. But I think just as a, I don't know, I mean, I do sort of say this in the introduction that as a Scot, I think I feel we've sort of been hard done by a little bit over the decades by the Scottish film industry, because it sort of exists, but not really. And we still don't have a film studio. So I think we kind of cling on or grab most things that have a Scottish accent, or that are filmed here or set here, even if it's just to kind of have a bit of fun with it and make a bit of, maybe not take it too seriously, because you can't really take Highlander seriously. So I hope that more and more people are kind of, in Scotland certainly, are embracing it a bit more and saying, okay, Sean Connery's in it. Okay, he's not playing a Scot, but it's set in Scotland, some of it, and it was actually filmed here. So maybe we should just embrace it a bit and just have a bit of fun and say, okay, the world is looking at us. I mean, it's not a bad representation of Scotland. The hills and the mountains and the loch look amazing, and okay, the history is a little bit wonky, and they probably wouldn't have been wearing kilts. They wouldn't have been wearing kilts. But yeah, just have fun with it. So I think people are more and more just embracing the bonkers nature of it, and again, in Scotland, we kind of need all the films we can get.
Exactly, and it's essentially a Hollywood production which is filmed in Scotland, but also it is Scotland. It's that's like with the Avengers Infinity War. I was actually very surprised when they made a big deal about filming in Scotland, but then it was Edinburgh. It wasn't like where normally when they go to Glasgow and film stuff like Fast and Furious movies and things like that, it always ends up being somewhere else and stuff like that. So it was nice actually for it to be in Scotland. And I mean, I remember seeing it probably late 80s, early 90s, I think, on VHS. I think it was one of those ones that me and my mates rented. I remember like that poster, the VHS cover with the sort of hand-drawn sort of, Christophe Lambert and the sort of Kurgan lurking behind him. I remember that really sort of stuck out at us on the VHS shelves. And even when I took my wife to see it for the 30th anniversary, she actually enjoyed it. I didn't think she would, but she did enjoy it. She said it was, cheesy as hell, but it was actually, she actually enjoyed it. I think the Queen soundtrack helped a lot, I think. And so, like, in your opinion, what is the best Queen song on the soundtrack, and why is it Who Wants to Live Forever?
Well, no, Who Wants to Live Forever is probably my favourite, although A Kind of Magic is just a great, I mean, I remember that from the time as the one, just being out at the time in the 80s and loving that at the time. I mean, I love Queen. I've not bought any of their albums. I don't know if I should admit that, but no, I have. I did buy A Kind of Magic, I think, on iTunes, but Who Wants to Live Forever is just a beautiful song. And I thought it was really important in the book. Well, of course, Michael Kamen sadly died a few years ago, so I would have loved to have spoken to him. I wish I'd started this earlier. But it was very difficult to find anyone that had worked with him. So I wanted to try and speak to some people maybe who'd worked on maybe recording the score, maybe that were in the studio at the time, but I couldn't find anyone. So I ended up speaking to Neil Brand, who I'm sure a few people have heard of, who does Radio 4 and BBC 4 as well. He's got a Sound of Cinema TV show. So I really wanted to speak to a composer, someone who someone else who's worked in that area, just to sort of try and get an idea of what it might have been like for Michael Kamen to work on this film and what he was thinking, as much as we could tell, of course. So that was brilliant, getting his insight. And then I was lucky enough to speak to Brian May and Roger Taylor, and I was trying to get them for 4 years. Almost from when I started, I was emailing my manager, and they were always on tour. And so I was always told, no one ever said no as such. And they kept being very polite and kept saying, well, they're still on tour, but maybe in 6 months' time. And then I would email back and say, no, they're still on tour. Maybe try another 6 months' time. And then, of course, this pandemic happened. And I sort of thought, is it right to email them? It's not the best time in a way. But they were putting stuff on Instagram, and Brian May was putting lots of messages on Instagram. This is before he was ill, because I think he had a heart attack this summer. I think that's what he had. It was a bit unclear for a while what happened to him, but anyway, this was just at the start of the lockdown. Anyway, so I got to speak to both of them, and Brian spoke very fondly of working with Michael Kamen, and they didn't know each other before, but now, then they became good friends, and so yeah, it was really nice to be able to sort of get into that, because I for a long time I thought that that's a chapter that's just going to be I don't know. I didn't know how it was going to go, and I thought I'm going to let people down here.
Because I was reading that, and you sort of said that you were speaking to him during the lockdown and stuff like that. So, in some respects, the lockdown actually was beneficial to you in being able to do that. Was it a bit of a scramble to get that chapter done? Because I imagine that the book was it pretty much finished at that point, and you were having to then sort of go, I've got one more chapter to throw in here, or
Yeah, I mean, that chapter originally, I did speak to, so yeah, like I keep saying, I didn't know what was going to go in there for a long time. So I managed to speak to the music supervisor for the film. I spoke to him a couple of years ago. And I also reached out to one of the Queen tribute bands, Mercury, because I thought, okay, if I can't get Queen, maybe I could try one of the tribute bands and see what it's like playing these songs to fans. So originally that was going to be the chapter. So yeah, it was kind of written pretty much. It was coming together anyway in the summer. And I think I probably asked my publisher, I think I was maybe about a month, maybe 3 weeks late with the manuscript, which is not bad. I believe other people have been a lot later. But yeah, there was a bit of a scramble to sort of move things around. And then a friend who read the book did say at one point, I think you should move the tribute band stuff into the sort of chapter at the end, I think, with the fans. Because originally it was all together, and he was like, that doesn't really fit having them in there. So yeah, things were moved around until quite late in the day. But in the research for the book, I'd not read as much as that about the soundtrack. I hadn't read his interviews, that were as long as I managed to get. So I'm quite happy with that. It's quite nice to have.
Yeah, it's still such a shame that there isn't a sort of full proper Highlander, album and soundtrack, together, something like that. I know that you sort of kind of go into the book and it's kind of difficult with, who owns the rights to everything and stuff like that. But maybe one day, whether it's the 40th or 50th anniversary or something, maybe something will happen. But I have to thank your book for helping to clear up something which has annoyed me ever since Bohemian Rhapsody came out. And me and my wife were watching it, and it gets to the scene where Freddie's telling the band, that he's been diagnosed, and this is just before Live Aid, and then Who Wants to Live Forever comes in, and I'm just like shaking my head, going, "Oh, that wouldn't have been that wasn't written before then. They wouldn't have been doing it then." And it was just like, yes, it's proof that they did Live Aid, and that's what put them on the map. That then alerted them to do it, and then they wrote it afterwards. And I was like, yes, thank you. I've got conclusive proof that it wouldn't have happened that way. Yeah. I know that for dramatic effect or whatever, they've kind of moved things around, but it's like I still thought it was a bit on the nose to have that song on there. But that was it.
Yeah. No, well, I'm glad that cleared that up.
Yeah.
A lot of fans, really nice, just sort of hearing from Queen fans who have just enjoyed reading a new interview, I guess, with the guys. So it's good.
Yeah, and it's just those are just two of many, many interviews that you've got in the book. It's pretty much not many stones have been left unturned with trying to interview people in this one. Did you, I think I saw on Twitter, do you say, was it 60 plus interviews or something that you did maybe for this one?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any
Do
you have any highlights from those, or anyone that you weren't able to get? Obviously, besides the late great Sean Connery, but I guess he was pretty much fully retired by that point anyway, so that was probably just a no-go from the start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I did email, like I said, before Clancy came to Edinburgh, I had emailed Sean and Christopher and Clancy. So I did get that email back, which I put in there, that sort of like a one-sentence email back that said, so Sean is retired, has asked me to decline interviews, which was a real shame. Because you read I read things or watch extras with people who work with Sean, and a lot of time people are saying, I sent him something in the post, and then I got a phone call one night, and it was Sean Connery on the phone, and I was like, maybe that'll happen, but it never did. So yeah, I mean, I think 60 in a way is possibly too many people to interview. I kind of accept that maybe it's because it took me a long time. But when I started the book, I didn't have a publisher, so I didn't really have a deadline. So I kind of was thinking, well, just keep interviewing people, keep reaching out. And some people I didn't get. I really wanted to try and get Joan Washington, who was the voice coach, and she's Judy Garland's wife as well. And but she sadly declined. Celia Imrie, she sadly declined as well. David Yip, there's a whole chapter and a whole section in there bizarrely about David Yip, who I'm sure a lot of people, some people will know and some people won't, but it's very, I mean, it was a bit almost detective work, I suppose, but I still didn't quite get to the bottom of what happened with the fact he's not in the film, but everything suggests that he was very almost in the film, but somehow he didn't quite make it to the studio or something. That's a weird story. So it would be great to get him. And as for the highlights, I mean, Roxanne Hart was great to speak to, because I met her in Birmingham, went down to speak to her. And Christopher Lambert, well, the week after the Edinburgh screening with Clancy, there was a screening at the Prince Charles Cinema in London with Clancy and Christopher. So I flew down to London to try and get that, because I was told, you can speak to Christopher there. But sadly, one of the members of his family wasn't well that day. So that interview was cancelled. And they said, well, maybe you can speak to him tonight. But my flight back up to Edinburgh was at kind of 8 o'clock that night. Because I didn't want to spend the night in a hotel and try and just get extra money, So I can remember sitting in this hotel near the Prince Charles, and Clancy was there with his wife and his kids, and I was sort of sitting there. We were just looking at each other as just, what a wasted journey this was. But it was great to meet them, or at least see them on stage together. But sadly, didn't speak to him. So when I did speak to him, that was over the phone. I think it was about 18 months later when he phoned me, and we spoke for about an hour and a half. And then so that event that they had in Birmingham with Roxanne, I wanted to speak to Christopher there. And I tried to set it up, but it didn't happen, sadly. He's a great guy, but he's very, I don't quite know what the word is. He's just very unique and quirky, and he just does his own thing. I'm sure we all do, but if someone had said to him, okay, you're going to be getting interviewed at this time, but I think he just doesn't really take it in. He just sort of was just talking to people and having fun, and I was the last of his. He couldn't really care less that I was hanging about, so I didn't mind too much. But so I have met him. I got my photo taken with him, but even then, I think the language barrier. Even now, so I was trying to say to him while I was getting my photo taken, I'm writing the book on Highlander, and he really wasn't taking it in. So I don't know. Anyway, we got there in the end. And also the other person I wanted to get early on was Gregory White, who wrote the original script of Highlander. And we did communicate a bit by Facebook, but it just didn't quite happen. And then in the last few days, talking about a scramble, in the last few days before the book was due to go to the publisher, someone on Twitter got in touch and said, "Oh, Gregory's a good friend of mine. Why have you spoken to him?" And I said, "Well, kind of almost." And then he said, "Oh, I've just spoken to Gregory," and he said, "You haven't you haven't been in touch. And I said, no, I was in touch 2 years ago. But so there is a bonus in there. I've actually not mentioned it anywhere. Nobody seems to have mentioned it anywhere. So there is a bonus in there if you're interested to hear what Gregory Wyden really thinks. But that came right the day before it was due to go to the publisher. So
one of my favourite chapters is definitely, I think it's the one with when they first get to Scotland, and is it Campbell Muirhead, the guy who became almost accidentally became the stand-in for Christoph on that film, and his experiences on it are just it's just a joy to read that chapter about someone who's just basically fallen into basically the job of a lifetime, and basically getting to hang out with Sean Connery and stuff like that when Christoph isn't on set and stuff like that. What was the experience like of talking to him?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, that was someone again on Twitter. I think I saw someone in maybe it was like 2016 or 17, who just by accident on Twitter they said something like, "I've just been working with Campbell Muirhead today on this film, and he tells great stories about Highlander." And so I think I was following this person, and I sent him a message, and then we ended up just going back and forth. And yeah, it turned out because Campbell still works, still does sort of standard work and extra work. In fact, he's in the new Eva Queen series on BBC One, Small Apps series. I think he's in maybe episode 1. I think he plays a judge. I've not watched the episode yet, but he mentioned to me the other week he was in it. So I finally spoke to him, and I think we spoke for maybe 2 hours, and he just kept telling me all these fantastic stories, and he's so funny, and just it's ludicrous some of the stuff he comes out with, but it's great. So no, I think all those sort of getting to speak to those extras and people behind the scenes just adds so much detail that if you were only counting on Christopher Lambert or Clancy, you just wouldn't get most of it, because they only saw a very different side of it. Like Sean Connery was, people said, do you regret not having him speaking to him? And of course, I would love to have done, but he only was on the film for 4 or 5 days, and he was living in a castle, and he's been flown around by helicopter. So I think his version of the story was probably very different to Campbell's and other people who were living in tents or getting soaked every day, whereas Sean was flown in 5 minutes before the scene started, and so I don't know how much he would have said anyway.
You've written a book on Tremors already, Seeking Perfection. I mean, what were the differences between sort of writing this book and your first book? I mean, was it a similar process, or was there much that you'd learned on writing the first book that you could then take into doing a second book? Or
I don't know. I feel this one. I think one of the things with Tremors is that the creators of the film are still friendly with each other, and were involved in the first 4 films and the TV series. So they kind of have been, or were a part of this world for many, many years. They're not involved in the new sequels, and I think that shows because the new sequels just sadly aren't that good. But I think having them still, as I say, still friendly with each other, and they were warm, their memories were very warm at the time, that helped that book come together, because I could keep going back to them, and they were just so friendly, and I could email any time of the week or whatever and say, "Oh, did you mean this when you said that? And what, I didn't understand this bit," and they could come back and say, "This, this is what I meant." Whereas on Highlander, it was more of a job for everybody, I think, rather than part of their life for years and years. So I would interview somebody, and they had dealt with, I don't know, being the cinematographer in the New York section for a week, and then that was it, and they never thought about Highlander again until I spoke to them. So memories were much more difficult to get, I think, with this one. And trying to piece together, the other thing with Tremors was it was all filmed in the desert, one location basically, whereas this one had, of course, Scotland and London and New York. And trying to work out the timeline took me ages. And trying to work out who went where, when, and why. And there were some moments where my head hurt quite a lot just to work out how things fit in with each other and how they started filming one thing in London and then finished it in New York, like the final sequence on Silver Cup, which they started filming in London, and then they did it in New York. So that was really time consuming, and also just the business side of it, which I wasn't really sure how much to go into, but I sort of thought, well, if you're going to talk about this stuff, you could just glance over the whole film industry side and Thorn EMI, who funded it, or maybe I should go into a bit of detail, because I think by going into some of the detail early on, it pays off at the end when you're talking about why it didn't succeed, and the fact that American funders or 20th Century Fox didn't put money into the film, which meant that when they came to release it, they weren't that bothered what happened to it because they had no money in it, whereas the British did. So, but because you're talking about that stuff, it can get very boring. Me explaining it there is probably quite boring to listen to, but writing it was even more boring. It wasn't fun, because we watch a film to be entertained. We don't watch it for someone to say, we don't watch it to find out who was sorting out the budget in 1985 and what the office was like, where they went in every day with their calculator or something. The boring side of it, we don't really care about. But I think fans do, on the other hand. So hopefully, I did stop myself a few times and try and make it faster and, cut big chunks out because it was just too dull. Yeah.
Well, I certainly think you have done that. I think the biggest compliment I can pay the book and to any sort of making of the book is it makes you want to watch the film again immediately after finishing the book, because you learn so much about things and you want to go back and see them. I mean, there's the sequence on the special effects where it's been kind of scripted that when the Kurgan dies, all the souls of the past immortals come out, and basically Conor McLeod has to battle them, and then it's like the special effects guys getting Christophe Lambert being spun around on wires and really having nothing to go on and having to come up with an entire sequence themselves. It's like that, sort of hearing that. I mean, I remember I think even Clancy at the 2016 one going on about the fact you could almost still see the wires that were hanging up and they had to put lightning down them and stuff like that. But sort of reading that sort of stuff, it kind of puts into context just at times a crazy sort of film it must have been to work on. I mean, what were the sort of things that surprised you or you learned about the film while doing all this sort of research and interviews? Was there anything that sort of stuck out?
Oh, that's difficult. That's difficult because I obviously spoke to so many people and heard so many stories. I mean, I suppose, yeah. I mean, that last sequence is an interesting one because, like you say, it was the Russell Mulcahy kind of give them like a one sentence explanation of what he thought should happen, and then they were left to just sort of come up with what were these ghosts and demons or whatever they were. Why were they coming out of him? And nobody really knew, and they were just sort of saying, I didn't know, I didn't understand what was happening. I just had to go at trying to make it look good. But I think what was interesting or surprising in a way, maybe was Russell Mulcahy and the effect that he had on people. And also what was surprising was the Britishness of the film, because as I've said before, I always just thought it was an American film. And I don't know, I suppose that's just an age thing as well. When you watch films when you're young and there's explosions and things, you think, oh, it must be American because there's Americans in it and everything like that is filmed in America. And so when I did start looking into this more and found out it was British money that made it, and the American producers came to Britain and got it here, and of course it makes sense now having Hugh Quarshie in there as casting gear because he's obviously a British actor. But at the time I thought, before it rather, I thought was Hugh Quarshie in America at the time and just happened to get cast for it. So I think just understanding more about why it came to be, that was interesting. And then, like I was saying about Russell, the fact that he came from MTV and he was one of the first, well, he was actually the first director to be seen, whose work was seen on MTV. the kind of clash in a way with him and his modern, brand new MTV style, fast paced, kinetic camera work, and the British film industry, who were used to doing things like I don't know, Carry On films or David Lean films, or just things that are maybe a little bit more grounded. I keep using that word, but back to being grounded again in real and real world. I think there was just a bit of a clash there, and I think a lot of people probably thought, who is this young Australian guy running about with crazy camera angles and so yeah, I think realizing what an effect he had on how that film looked, and if he hadn't been involved, who knows, would it have? There are so many things you just wonder, what if one thing wasn't involved? Like, if it wasn't Queen music, would it still be the film it is? If it wasn't Russell's energy, would it still be that? If Christopher Lambert had been Scottish, would it have just been a bit more normal and people maybe wouldn't have commented on so much? Or if it hadn't been Sean Connery in it? So it's just one of those things, like, I guess, all great films, all films that are classics that we hold up, remove any one element, and would it have just not be, who knows what that magic is? Which is part of the title. That's part of the reason I used that title. Although I did sort of pinch it, I thought nobody's actually commented. I thought people might think I'd stolen it from Queen, but it is in the original script. A kind of magic, and of course that is my very clever double meaning, because the film is a kind of magic. I don't quite know what is that magic element. Hard to say, but it works.
There's so many great things about. I mean, you debunk the theory that Sean Connery recorded the opening voiceover in a toilet and stuff like that as well. So, I mean, there's lots of interesting sort of nuggets of information for all sorts of fans to find out. It really is, it is, like you say, it's the book on Highlander, and it's clear that you're a fan of the film. I mean, what are some of your favourite moments within the film?
Well, the thing that's always stuck with me are the transitions between the different time periods. I mean, I just remember seeing that first one. Well, it's maybe not quite the first one, but the one where it comes up through the bottom, through the car park into Glendonan. I remember seeing that in the cinema at the time and just thinking, that's amazing. And that was, 8 years after it came out, I suppose. But even now, I think you watch that and it's just, I think if you've never seen it before, it must be still quite jarring or just impressive, really, in an impressive way. So yeah, those transitions always really stuck with me. I think all the sequences with Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert are memorable, because I think Sean is just so great in the film, and although it's a cameo, really, he just adds so much gravitas to it, I suppose, and brings so much to it, as well, with a kind of twinkle in his eye, I think. So no, those are my kind of favourite moments. And what else? And really, I suppose Clancy, anything with Clancy as well. He just gets so many great lines and so many little nods at the camera. And as he sort of says in the film, in the book, I suppose it is still trying to. I still don't quite know. I think he was very open, I think, in the book, but I don't know. It's still hard to know what he really thinks of it these days. I wonder if he really, like, I think coming to Scotland, I mean, I'm theorising here, but when he came to Scotland in 2016, obviously his trip was being paid for, so he was working, really. So he was being very polite, although he was quite honest, I think, with me, and he sort of said, about the money and what he thought of the script for the sequel. I still don't know. I still sort of feel he's holding back a little bit on Highlander, but I could be wrong. Maybe really, maybe it is a happy memory, or maybe he just detested it and he's just never let anyone down so much by saying that. I don't know.
But yeah, no. In the book, he sort of goes on about. There's been constant rumors for I don't know, ever since it sort of had been released. I think with the remake with was it Chad Stahelski from John Wick apparently being attached. I know Batista at one point. Dave Batista was attached as the Kurgan. I don't know if he is anymore, but Clancy himself says, it's not a perfect film, and someone remaking it today could probably do a better job. Special effects have moved forward and stuff like that. I mean, I'm always a fan of more practical effects anyway, but I mean, if you were dream casting a remake of it, I mean, putting you on the spot, would you be able to?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think we should have a Scottish Connor, assuming Connor's in it. I mean, I hope if they remake it, they keep the basic characters. Otherwise, it's not really much point. So, but maybe an unknown Scottish actor. I think it would be, I think there are obviously some great Scottish actors, but there's none of them that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, Gregor, no, what's his name? Butler, Gerard Butler.
Mm-hmm.
He's too old now, I think. Sorry, Gerard, if you're listening, but he's too old, isn't he? Because he has to start off in his probably 20s. So, yeah, I hope they would find someone new. As for, I mean, I hope they would bring in the old guys for a cameo. I think you have to try and get them. But no, as for who the Kurgan would be and who Castiglione would be, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I should have kind of sat and thought about this a bit more. What about yourself? Have you got any?
It's a tough one. Ideas? It's a tough one because I know Christophe Lambert said he would like to be the mentor character if they did. He would come riding in on a white horse and do that. But I mean, I liked Clancy's idea of the Kurgan. I think at one point he suggested his Kurgan could have been like a Wall Street banker or something, that kind of evil in the 80s, or like a Heath Ledger Joker kind of maniacal, rather than like the big sort of bulky powerhouse. That's quite an interesting take to do on these days. I don't know if there's anything in Highlander lore that prevents a female immortal, because I guess it would be quite a different type of film these days with the I guess like social media and stuff about how you go about finding the other immortals and stuff. I mean, have you seen The Old Guard, the Netflix film with Charlize Theron? Because it kind of borrows a lot from the sort of Highlander sort of things about these immortals who go on these missions and stuff. And that's essentially if Highlanders decided that they want to team up rather than kill each other, I guess. But it certainly has a modern take on that theory. So it's interesting to see how Highlander would go these days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it would be tempting to bring a female immortal in as maybe cast Ramirez. Maybe Ramirez is a female mentor, or the Kurgan becomes a female warrior. Who knows? I mean, I can imagine that sort of happening now, rather than maybe 10 years ago. I don't think it would have done. And I don't really mind. I mean, I think good luck to them if they try and remake. You can't. It's like all these things. The original's always going to be there. If you don't want to see it, just don't watch it.
Yeah.
And I think for everything I read from Chad Stahelski, if he is still involved in it in a few years' time, if and when it happens, he does seem very committed to it, and more than anyone, when you read the interviews with him, he seems to understand that it's not just about sword fights, that there is more to it than that. So I don't envy them. I mean, it's anyone that reboots something, you're open to so much criticism, aren't you, from the old fans and the new fans, and everybody just saying, well, why are you being lazy because this is not a new idea? But so I don't know. But I would go and watch it.
I don't know how you'd top Queen in terms of a soundtrack, though.
No,
that's the difficult thing.
No
but
idea.
In terms of legacy, I mean, people keep talking about a remake, but this was a film where the tagline was, there can be only one, but it somehow managed to spawn multiple film sequels and a TV series and stuff like that. I mean, because you go into it in the book with part of the sort of what you might refer to as the boring budget stuff, but I found it fascinating that these films kept getting made despite basically never really making their money back, but certainly on cinematic runs. But, there is still a core group of Highlander fans that want to see more stories about it. So, I mean, did you, when they announced, like, when you found out there was a Highlander 2, did you, and they brought back Sean Connery, did you sort of think, I mean, the fact he did get slightly more money than he did for the first time. What was it, 1 million for sort of 3 or 4 days work the first time round? He got about 3 million for 7 days work. I can understand why he came back, but
well, that's it. And then in there, one of the guys who worked with him saw him and said, "Why are you doing it, Sean?" He says, "It's the money, laddie. It's the money." But I mean, my timeline, my personal timeline with Highlander is such that I think Highlander 2 was out by the time I'd seen the first Highlander, I think. But yeah, I mean, the sequels, yeah, I mean, I've watched them all, and it's not the most enjoyable experience. I watched Highlander 2 again recently, the Renegade one, and hoping that, once you come back to it after a few years, maybe it's sort of one of you's changed, either you or the film's changed, and no, I don't think we're both the same. We're both, the film's still, yeah. I mean, it's nice to have Sean in there, but it just doesn't hang together very well, and the fight sequences don't quite work for me. They're quite pedestrian, and you can tell that they had to work quite a lot in reformatting or reworking the script. I think from maybe having the Kurgan in there, and the baddies don't quite work. So yeah, it's not a huge success. 3 is not terrible. Still not amazing, but I suppose my favourite of the lot is Highlander Endgame, because it feels like they're at least trying a bit more to honour the first film, and they bring back Heather and Rachel, his secretary. So yeah, and then the TV series I've watched a fair few episodes, but it never kind of holds me quite enough to keep coming back to binge watch it. I kind of just watch one in a while. But I think, again, with talking about the reboot, it's such a simple concept, really. It's just brilliant. You've got someone who's immortal who fights other immortals. It's so simple. And you just think that you could do so much with a new TV series based on that idea. Maybe Netflix or Amazon, which I think Christopher Lambert says in the book is his preferred option is Netflix, because you could have all these different immortals. It doesn't have to be an immortal of the week, but you could just spend so much time with them in different time periods. And anyway, yeah. So I think it's a world that deserves more love, and it could be huge again. I mean, I remember I'm a Doctor Who fan. And I remember when that went off there in 1989, I remember for years afterwards saying, this could be huge if the BBC just spent some time on it, and people would just, like, but that's dead. It's finished. And it came back, and it's still, I mean, it's still one of the biggest things on the BBC now, this rebooted version. So I think it could work again.
Yeah, no, I definitely would like to see the idea of, like a extended sort of TV series where you sort of, because it then allows you, like you say, sort of spend more time through the different time periods and stuff like that with the different people. So yeah, I would certainly like to see that. Are there any particular pieces of Highlander merchandise that you are a fan of, that you own? Have you collected anything over the years, or?
Not really. I mean, I got a copy of the Immortal Edition DVD, the American version, and at the time I was working at Visit Scotland, which is the tourist board here, Scottish Tourist Board, and someone who worked in my office was because Brian May is does a lot of astronomy, and he was here with Sir Patrick Moore, and they were both touring the Highlands, and one of my colleagues was going with them. Anyway, so I said, can you get Brian May to sign my DVD, which she did. So I've got a signed Highlander DVD. But no, I mean, merchandise, I think the biggest time for the merchandise was sort of the 90s when the TV series was out. And I talk about, again, in a book about the catalogue that was produced by Davis Panzer, who owned the rights to the first film. And they just produced so much merchandise, but I didn't know about it at the time. it's probably quite good actually. We ended up spending money on it, too much money, but they produced so many swords and T-shirts and I don't know, bookmarks probably, and all these different things. So there's stuff out there which you can track down on eBay, but and there's some figures that have come out as well, but they always seem to be too expensive. Everything's made now for that collector's market, and everything's so expensive. It's like, I just want to spend £20 on something. So I'm glad the book is less than £20, and if people are a fan, they can hopefully it doesn't break the budget, to read about it. So
exactly, yeah. I think I blame Star Wars for it all because it's like I have my original complete set of original figures, but they were capped at 93 figures. There were never any more, but these days they they keep producing more and more. You can never finish your collection, and it's always far too expensive. But I met Brian May once actually. He was up at Aberdeen University doing an event, and I managed to get him to sign the Highlander poster, which I got Clancy Brown to sign. So I've got those two. So I need to try and get go to a convention or something and get Christoph Lambert, whatever, to try and add a few more onto it. So that'd be good. But it's an odd one. There's a board game actually now apparently as well, like a card board game. Have you heard of that one?
I've seen it. I think I saw it in Forbidden Planet once, but I have not bought it. No. Mm-hmm. No. I mean, I guess I don't know. I suppose because I've bought so much stuff over the years, I just try and be a bit more sensible these days. And I still buy lots of Blu-rays, and I hope Highlander gets a proper like a Blu-ray 4K Blu-ray set or Blu-ray and 4K edition in the next few years. I would hope that by the 40th anniversary, because we're coming up for the 35th anniversary next year, and I hope. I mean, my book, I suppose, at the moment is the only thing really that's coming out, unless Brian May manages to get that soundtrack album done. But I really hope there's a nice big set with extras from the vaults that we've not seen, and because there's all those deleted scenes that some photos turn up from on the official Instagram account. If anyone, I think it's just Highlander.official on Instagram, and they regularly put up photos of deleted scenes from Highlander. So it'd be great to see more of those. And of course, if any of the footage exists that was removed, maybe that'll go on a Blu-ray or something. But who knows?
Yeah, so I guess, like you say, in the meantime, the book is the place to go for anyone who's a fan of Highlander, or maybe even not, but just a fan of film books in general. So the book at the moment is out in the UK, but it's out in the US from December the 7th. Where, if people were keen to get a hold of a copy, where would the best places to go to get one?
Well, I mean, we've been doing some because I had so many photos that we couldn't fit in the book. I suggested to the publisher that we do like a limited edition booklet of photos. So we managed to get those. So those are available on the website, which is polarispublishing.com, I think it is. And it's kind of free with it, so we've not bumped the price up at all. So those have been quite popular, and they're limited to 1536 copies, which is a date that is sort of in the film. But Amazon, Amazon's the other place. And the book should have actually come out a bit earlier in America, but brilliantly, so many people pre-ordered it that the publisher had to get copies printed over there, rather than the ones that were being sent over by ship. So yeah, people seem to be looking forward to it, which is good.
Excellent. And your first book, Seeking Perfection, All About Tremors, is also available on Amazon as well? Yeah.
That's right, absolutely. And although this is not a Tremors episode, there's a new box set coming out in December, Tremors box set from Arrow, which I do a commentary for, my first attempt at a commentary. Hopefully that works out okay, hopefully people like it. And there's documentaries and loads of hours of stuff, so yeah.
And if the offer came to work on a special edition Blu-ray of Highlander with commentary, behind-the-scenes stuff, would you be willing to lend your services to it?
I would force myself to, yeah. It'd be difficult, but I'd find the time.
I'm sure you would.
But no, I would love it. I'd love to. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for spending the time talking a little about Highlander. It's been an absolute pleasure. Best of luck with the book. But if anyone reads the book and wants to reach out and talk to you about Highlander or Tremors or just anything sort of film related, where can they get a hold of you?
I think the best place is probably Twitter. So it's just John Jon _ Melville on Twitter, or just / Jonathan Melville on Facebook. Got a page there, so you can get in touch. And I do get some questions sometimes, and weird and wonderful questions, which I'm happy to try and answer.
Excellent. And yep, well, all the best with the book. There can be only one book on Highlander, and you've written it, and it's fantastic. And I wish you all the best with it. So thank you.
Thanks, Dallas. Cheers.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.